Do you have a monkey in your pants?
Right then folks, this is a video response to my good friend Lawnboyspost1975 Dave. I will stick a link in his style in the doohickey down below, but he basically put up a video saying, do you remember your first car? And his first car was his favourite car, or his most loved car. Now, so I thought I would come on and give you a little bit insight into my car history. Still drinking Call of Duty juice. Now, first of all, I learned to drive maybe when I was 21, a little bit late, where some of my friends were maybe learning to drive when they were 17 and whatnot. So we'll say 20 or 21, and my first car that I bought was one of these. I'll put a picture up here, so if I know what side. It was a Renault Megane, 1.6 16 valve, yellow. I'd saved up quite a bit of money actually, don't know how, but I drove past the garage or whatever and I was looking online for cars, and at that point in time I never really knew much about cars. Let me say first of all, my favourite car of all time, I've not got one to hold up, is a DeLorean, just like Dave. One of my favourite films is also Back to the Future. Excuse me. So I was looking for cars and whatnot. I don't know why I decided on the Renault Megane. I suppose it looked a little bit sporty. Yeah, but that was my first car. The first car that I learned to drive in was a Ford Focus, which was absolutely mint, easy to drive car. And the driving instructor was actually a couple of years older than me at the most. And it got to the point where I was waiting on my test and I could drive fine. So for shits and giggles, he would take me down. I lived in Edinburgh at the time, down Leith and whatever, to try and find prostitutes. Not to take in the car, because that would be wrong, but just to say, there's one. Can you have a better driving lesson than Education of the World of the Red Light District in Edinburgh? Who knows? But my first car was this side, Renault Megane 1.6 16 valve yellow. I thought it was the shit. Absolute dog's bollocks. I did love it. Not my favourite personal car, but I did love it. And then one of my mates told me he got a new car, and I was like, alright, cool. And I looked it up and I was like, that looks fucking cool actually. And he came up and showed me it. He drove up from down south, and I was like, whoa. And it was, I keep pointing to the wrong side, one of these MR2. Now his was it was an H-Reg 1990 MR2 2 litre. Japanese import, but just the bog standard 2 litre. And when I saw that, I'd never seen anything like it. I was like, holy fuck, this looks like a fucking transformer or something. It looks awesome. And then you got in the inside and sat in it. I'll put a picture up as well, but the cockpit basically wraps around you and you're sitting low in your seats, and I was like, whoa, what is this epic shit? This is amazing. It's like, woo! And then as soon as I saw his car, and he'd gone back home or whatever, I started researching these tasty Toyota MR2 machines, and I was having a look at them and I realised you could get a turbo model, and I was like, that's better than my friends, surely. So I went ahead and imported one of these, wrong side again, this side, 1990, it was a G-Reg 1990 MR2 Turbo. Bog standard, with the exception it had some large wheels in it and lowered aftermarket suspension. Cost me £4.5 to import it. I think it was maybe 2001 when I imported it. And at that time, I had only had the Megane for 4 months. I bought the Megane. It was 2 years old maybe, I think the Megane was, 98, 99 plate. I bought the Megane for £6.5. I sold it for £4. 4 months after buying it. Simply because I'd already paid the deposit on the MR2. It was getting imported from Japan. It was coming over, and it got to the point where I needed to get rid of it. So I had the money for the MR2. So I bought the MR2 Turbo from Japan, £4.5, and I had it for 2 years, and I then turned it into this. £12.5 later, not including labour costs, it looked like a fucking mean street beastie. It was insane. It was kicking about 280, I think it was, brake horsepower, considering it was a 2-seater for those of you who don't know. Pretty lightweight car. Engine sits right behind you, behind the firewall. Basically the firewall's behind your seats. you've got your seat, passenger seat, firewalls right behind your seats, and you've got the engine sitting there, and the turbo for the engine basically sits right behind you. So slam the foot down, and you hear that turbo whistling and spinning up, and then the blow-off valve or whatever dump valve letting off the air. It sounded absolutely amazing. Mental machine to drive. I spun the fucker twice. Was off the road for 2.5 months getting repaired. I think it was a good 3 grand's worth of repairs getting done to the underside of the suspension because I spun it in some wet rain, and it was my inexperience of driving a rear wheel drive car as well. But that car, MR2, my favourite car, and it's what I call my first car. I'd say the Renault Megane was more of a experiment into cars, but this bad boy, my first car, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Spent 12.5 grand getting it look like this and all the modifications to it and whatever, putting about 280 brake horsepower, and it was a beast. So that is my favourite car, but I thought I'd elaborate this ever so slightly, and I'm looking over here, look at the pictures of other cars, which I'll also put up here. But had the MR2, loved it, loved it, loved it, but me being me, I get bored of stuff. And I then got talking to somebody online somehow, and this guy had one of these, a Pulsar, and that's a picture of the car that I had, and I swapped the MR2 for the Pulsar, and that car was quick as frig, quicker than the MR2. I don't know if it was lighter or whatever, but it was quick. It was quite heavily modified, rebuilt engine, rebuilt gearbox, etc., and it was bonkers quick. The noise that thing made, it was just insane. So that was the Pulsar up there as well. Now after the Pulsar I had, what did I have? Oh, my dream car, and considering it was my dream car, I got rid of it pretty quickly. Now I've got very limited photos on my cars, unfortunately, because there was a great hard drive crash of 2000 and something where I lost lots of photos and whatever. The next car that I got was my dream car. I don't know if it was because of Fast and Furious films or whatever, but it was this here, 3 litre twin turbo Toyota Supra automatic. It's basically stock when I had it, and it fitted a aftermarket exhaust to it, and that's about as much as I left it. And this sort of kicked off a cycle of me randomly changing cars, or quite quickly changing cars. So that was my Supra there. After the Supra, I swapped the Supra for this car. It was a P-Reg, what's that, 96, 97 off the top of my head, Mitsubishi Evo 4 RS, lightweight edition, close ratio gearbox, and quick steering rack. I can't think, I've still got a bit of the cold. And that thing had been fettled with, is what I'd like to call it, and stock I think that car was 0 to 60 4.2 seconds I think. And it'd be fiddled with quite a bit, and it was rapid. Apologies, as you saw, my son decided to come in while I was making a video. How dare he? But I was saying, Evo was 4.2, 0 to 60, being fiddled with, and it was, like I say, it was stupidly quick. When I decided to sell that, and I can't remember the reason why I decided to sell that, the guy came down, had a quick look at it, took him out in it. I just put my foot down, boom, 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 through the gears, and he was like, I'll buy it. It was, honestly, it was ridiculously, impressively quick. Top end, it wasn't because of the close ratio gearbox, the top speed, but the acceleration in that thing, honestly, absolutely bonkers. So my next car, I sold the Evo, let's say, a guy came down, and the next car that I got, very few pictures of it actually, I'm just doing a quick sketch, was this car here. I think it was a 93 plate RX-7 twin turbo, absolutely bonkers go-kart car. It's kind of car, so small in the cockpit, the steering wheel had no adjustment on it at all. If you were sitting there in the cockpit, it went like this, your head was hitting across the pillar. That's how tiny it was, but ridiculously quick. The only problem I had with it is I was driving to somewhere one day about an hour away, and I had an oil leak. One of the oil cooler lines had cracked and split. I got it towed and whatever, ridiculously late at night. I did replace the oil line, took it for a little drive, and one of the connections on the oil cooler line wasn't fitted properly, and I'd lost all the oil, and by the time I got home the little rotary engine was having a fucking fit, a total fit, and eventually that resulted in a dead engine. So with that car, what I've done, as you can see here, this is the beautiful sight of RX-7s, engines out them all the time. I bought a bare block, took the engine out, never really fiddled with cars that much, but I thought fuck it, nuts and bolts. Took the engine out, brought it into my house, stripped it down, got the bare block, swapped everything back over it, put it back in, and it ran magically, and that was that. The car, I then swapped it for this bad boy here, and it was an R33 GTST Skyline. It was the only picture I've got of it, unfortunately, but it had quite a wee bit of modification work done to it, bodywork wise and whatever, and it looked cool. And in that car I actually turned up to my wedding in with my best man, and the noise and whatever, it wasn't like showing off, it was just my daily car. Drove up to my wedding in that car, so it was an absolute machine that was. After that car, I then swapped it for this. Sorry if this is going on a bit if you're not a car freak. It was a Mitsubishi GTO 3 litre twin turbo, a 6-speed manual, and again that car was ridiculously quick. It was pushing on 350, 400 brake horsepower for a big heavy car. The acceleration in it was absolutely bonkers, bonkers, bonkers. But me being me, I soon got rid of the GTO. I actually sold the GTO, and then for some reason I went back to one of these again. A 3 litre twin turbo Supra I should say, another automatic car. This one had front mount intercooler, aftermarket exhaust, fuel cut, defender, whatever you call it, and whatever. And this one was pushing out about 400 brake horsepower. It didn't come with the bonnet that was on it. Fitted the bonnet myself after a lot of fucking about, but that car was a machine as well. It was an absolute beast. But for some reason, like I say, I'd started a cycle of getting rid of cars every 6 to 12 months for whatever reason. And a guy from Belgium came over and bought this car for me actually. Flew over from Belgium, I picked him up at Edinburgh Airport, took him to my house, he got the car, and he drove it all the way back to Belgium. Apparently it was cheaper to do that than buy the same car in his country, for however that works, I do not know. But the next car is my last toy car, is what I call it, and it was another RX-7. White one, fiddled with quite a lot, modified as would say, but this is a bit of a fucker, and I should have maybe done something about this at the time, but me being me, I didn't. I bought the car, next game day, engine problems, but me being me, because I'd had fun taking the engine out that black RX-7, I thought fuck it, I'll just take it out and fix it. It was my second car anyway, so I'd done that, took the engine out, completely stripped the engine apart, put new seals and whatever in it, put it back together, still had some problems, took it apart, put it back together, still had some problems, and at this point I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I'd had enough, so I sold it off cheap to somebody in Wales. He came up with a trailer, took it all the way back down to Wales, and I don't think the problem was as bad as what I thought it was. Maybe my engine building skills were okay, because I saw the car advertised for sale for considerably more about a week after I'd sold it to the guy, and he couldn't have stripped it down and whatever and rebuilt it, I don't think, within that amount of time. So that's it. So guys, that's basically a very brief insight into my car history, and unlike Lawnboys Post Dave, my first car, the Renault Megane, was not my favourite car. My favourite car today has to be MR2 Turbo, and for some reason I classed that as my first car. But like I say, a wee bit random, a wee bit different. Please check out Dave down below. I'll put a link to his channel there if you're not aware of him already. But as always guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Do you have a monkey in your pants?